know, you should have just bought the large.
Yeah, because if you keep eating those cookies, you won't be a medium much longer anyway.
Oh, haha.
So, what do all these characters have in common? Hello everyone, Rosie here. So y'all clicked on the video, you know what's up. Today we're getting into the nitty-gritty of fat shaming in kids media. And if you answered, all these characters are fat and evil and in kids movies, you win. So this was a topic that y'all voted for on Patreon like a long time ago. And I kind of put it off because it didn't seem relevant or whatever, like couldn't tie it into any of the hot new blockbusters. But then Avengers Endgame came out and I was like, hey, I can tie this into that fat shaming video. And then I didn't. And then I went on vacation. And then like a whole ass other MCU film came out. So much for being relevant. But I'm doing it now anyway. So let's start with that. Spoilers for Endgame, obviously. So the first act of Endgame, if y'all remember, is really like an exploration of how the 6 original Avengers are coping with the trauma of losing to Thanos and the Snap. Steve is struggling to move on and going to support groups. Nat is refusing to move on at all. Hawkeye got his hair and is murdering a lot of people. Only Tony and Hulk seem to be doing okay, but even in Tony's happy family life, it's clear he still has a lot of guilt. All of them are processing this trauma in different ways, and all of those ways are shown in the movie with sincerity and seriousness, and even Clint's awful haircut. And then we see how Thor is holding up.
God! Oh my God, it's so good to see you! Give me your cuddly little rascal!
No, I'm good.
This is the moment when I realized I was going to have a lot of complaints about this movie. Look, let me start by saying that it isn't inherently bad to show Thor gaining weight as a result of trauma. That's a thing that can happen. But the way the movie treats Thor being fat as a running joke for the next hour is uncomfortable. It's not as bad as it could have been. Thor does get to talk about his emotions with his mom and have some nice badass moments at the end, but not as bad as it could have been is a very low bar. None of the other Avengers had their trauma made into a joke about Cheez Whiz and shit. Clint is out there going straight up Rambo on people, and the movie's like, isn't this so cool? But a guy gains some weight after experiencing the genocide of his people in a way he feels personally responsible for, and it's chuckles ahoy. What's the joke here? The way the camera frames Thor, the way the other characters react to him, the jabs about Cheez Whiz, what's the joke? That a man grieving his entire family, his people, his sense of self, put on a few pounds? As frustrating as all this is, it's not exactly surprising. In a lot of media, fat characters fall into one of two categories. 1, the evil, cruel, and often stupid villain, or 2, the dopey, kind of pathetic, often stupid side character friend. Endgame is clearly trying to push Thor into this second category, at least for like 70% of the film, and I pray that Taika saves us from this nonsense in Thor 4. But, as I said, Endgame is not unique in this. I can't really talk about fat shaming in kids media without addressing the magical elephant in the room. Harry Potter. Here we go, you're thinking, another Harry Potter rant from Rosie, but it's true. Think of all the fat characters in Harry Potter. The vast majority of them fall into that first category. Mean, cruel, often stupid villains. Vernon, Dudley, Crabbe and Goyle, Aunt Marge, Umbridge, even Peter Pettigrew is fat. The only major fat characters who aren't a villain in all 7 books are Hagrid, who despite being well-meaning is kind of a bumbling goof, and Neville, who is forgetful, treated as pathetic, and the butt of the joke, right up until book 7 when he becomes heroic and he loses a bunch of weight. Awesome. And let's not let Disney Pixar off the hook yet either. Look at WALL-E. A beautiful, fantastic movie. But a major plot point is that humanity has become so passive, so wrapped up in convenience and consumption, that we are unable to solve our problems anymore. How does the movie convey this? Everyone is fat. everyone is so fat they can't even walk anymore. They're so fat that their bones are messed up. They just eat cupcakes in a cup and get rolled around in hover strollers like giant babies. Put a pin in this one because I want to come back to it later. A lot of good movies do this. Movies I like. Matilda makes the main villain a mean, cruel, fat woman. Zootopia's one fat character is the doofy snow leopard who's eating donuts in every single scene and is nothing but a goofy dum-dum. Jurassic Park's villain was a scheming, greedy, fat slob. TV shows do it too. Sometimes becoming fat is temporary, like a curse or something forced on the hot girl character, and she has to get thin again by the end of the episode. Totally Spies and Scooby-Doo did this exact plot. Even Arthur, as great of a kid show as that is, has an episode where Arthur thinks he's getting fat and imagines himself as a massive blob in a circus show. Peppa Pig, a show aimed at preschoolers, does this. Anime, even really good anime, like Howl's Moving Castle or Sailor Moon does this. Disney movies do this, whether it's Ursula or Radcliffe. Very, very often in our media, there is little to no body diversity. All the characters are pretty thin, and if a fat character shows up, a lot of the time, it's a visual shorthand so that we, the audience, know this character is either evil and mean or dopey and stupid. And these are movies and shows aimed at kids and teenagers. A 2017 study found that 84% of top-grossing kids movies from 2012 to 2015 promote weight stigma. A separate 2014 study showed that 58.3% of TV shows and cartoons aimed at kids contain fat-phobic messages. Not every show and movie does this, and you can fill the comments with exceptions and outliers if you want, but it's common. And I bet a lot of you can fill the comments with even more examples than exceptions. But why does this matter? Who cares? It's just movies. Well, let's talk about that. Weight is not a moral failure. In the real world, with real people, being fat is not a reflection of a person's kindness, intelligence, integrity, honesty, or general goodness as a person. There are a lot of reasons why a person might be fat, but they are a children's cartoon villain isn't one of them. For this next section, we're going to put a pin in all the media stuff, and we're going to talk, real quick, about some actual health facts. 1. Why obesity exists. Obesity is not caused by being a bad person. In fact, lots of factors can lead someone to being overweight. Metabolism and genetics are talked about a lot, and while being overweight can cause health problems, a lot of chronic health problems can cause weight gain. Mental health, some medications, stress and trauma can all cause weight gain. The biggest issue, though, is poverty and a lack of access to healthy food. In our food culture, especially here in the US, with our massive corn subsidies filling all of our food with cheap corn syrup, cheap high-calorie convenience food is the norm. The ability to cook healthy food is difficult for many Americans. It means the need to have access to a grocery store, transportation to a grocery store, the time to both go shop for and cook that food. And the food itself tends to be more expensive than just grabbing a bag of chips on your lunch break. The ability to do athletic activities, to exercise, is often a leisure activity, requiring time off and oftentimes money. The ability to consistently eat healthy and nutritious food and be active has become a luxury for many people, which is why more than 33% of adults who earn less than $15,000 per year are obese, compared to only 24.6% of those who earned at least $50,000 per year. Education level is tied strongly to wealth as well, and children of parents with less than 12 years of education had an obesity rate 3 times higher than those of parents who have a college degree. In short, being thin often costs money. And let's be clear, being fat isn't inherently unhealthy. Yes, sometimes being overweight will worsen health problems, but it is very possible to be fat and healthy or to be thin and unhealthy. Health isn't a single number on a scale. Blood pressure, cholesterol, activity level, chronic illness, general nutrition, all these things work together to determine overall health. BMI, the main way that obesity is measured, is also super flawed. Again, I'll link the info below. BMI doesn't take into account bone mass or muscle mass or waist size, which is actually a better indicator of weight-related health risks. Health is complicated, and trying to make judgments about health from one number is never going to work. So, fat phobia is not about people encouraging healthiness. The assholes who make snide digs about people's weight on Facebook aren't your doctor. They don't know your medical history. They are working off bad assumptions in bad faith. They aren't some kind of health advocate. They are insulting people and using weight as a weapon. So fat phobia isn't about health. It's about wealth. Remember when I said how poverty correlates strongly with obesity? Yeah, that didn't used to be true. If you think about fancy Renaissance paintings of nude women, think Rubens in the 1600s. We see voluptuous, pale women. In a time when having a calorie surplus and being out of the sun was a marker of high class, larger women with no tans were the height of beauty. Now, the ability to work out and have consistent access to healthy food is a mark of disposable income, and we see the shift. It's classism. Now remember that pin we put in the WALL-E discussion? Bring it back out. The whole idea that people who are surrounded by excess and ease would become fat man-children doesn't reflect our society. When you think about the people who have nothing to want for, who don't have to work hard long hours at shitty jobs that don't pay enough, who have access to whatever pleasures they like, they don't look like this. They look like this. So, important point now, fat shaming makes things worse. Study after study, and I'll put those down below, show that people, children and adults, who experience fat shaming actually gain more weight or struggle to lose weight. Now, let me be clear, not every overweight person needs to lose weight. If you're healthy and feel good and your weight isn't causing any issues for you, you're good. But for people who do want to lose weight, for whom losing weight would help them in other ways, being exposed to fat shaming actively makes that harder. My point is that fat shaming is bad for people's mental and physical health. It's rooted in prejudice and it actively harms people. So let's go back to the media now. Fat shaming and fat phobic messages in media are everywhere. But I'm not the TV police. When this shit shows up in Family Guy and American Dad and Archer or whatever trashy adult comedy cartoon, I can roll my eyes and turn the channel. Because adults have a lot of control over what media they watch. They have more experience and more ability to be critical of the media they do consume. They have access to accurate information about health and nutrition and the ability to separate lazy or harmful character coding with real-life people. They don't always do this, but the ability is there. But children, teenagers, they tend to have a lot less control over what media they watch. They don't have the experience or ability to be critical of that media. They don't have as easy access to accurate health information. Their ability to separate lazy character coding from real-life fat people may not be all there. Preteens are at an age where their self-image is just forming. Puberty is making their bodies grow and gain weight and change in brand new ways. And the idea of an 11-year-old kid who's gaining weight because they're growing into an adult person being bombarded with image after image of 1, fat people are all mean and cruel and petty, or 2, fat people are all stupid, pathetic doofuses to laugh at, is bad. According to the Academy of Pediatrics, stigmatizing a kid's weight can worsen obesity by making children less likely to be physically active or seek health care. It also makes binge eating and social isolation more likely, and media is likely a significant contributor to young people's weight problems in the first place. So it matters. So, what do we do? First, be aware of these messages. Be aware of how they look and how they sound and how they are untrue. Learn about actual health and body positivity messages. When you see fat shaming in media, be able and willing to call it out. And if you're in a position to work with or be around kids, make sure they know these things too. No one number can measure you as a person. Not how much you bench, not your SAT score, not your paycheck, and especially not your weight. Nothing. No single number can measure the value or quality of a person, and you need to know that, and kids need to know that. Because it's okay to show Thor struggling with PTSD and gaining some weight as he tries to deal with his trauma. But it's not okay to laugh at him for it. Thank you for watching this video. I know it got a little heavy there, but I appreciate it if you made it this far. If you liked listening to this queer millennial feminist rant for a few minutes, do all the YouTube things and check out my Patreon. I put up video scripts and polls for video topics. Thanks, and see you next time.